What an amazing way that God used you to reach a population that has not heard the gospel.
All right, so here's some of the challenges. I really respect Logan Paul. He began our time together by saying, I am not a Christian, but maybe by the end of this podcast, I will be.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of honesty and vulnerability, goodness gracious, that's cool. I found him to be a very nice guy, and it was fascinating, his sticking point. His sticking point was, you got to be kidding me. Good Jews and good Muslims and good Hindus, they need to accept Christ? I mean, that just is too narrow. That's just too bigoted. It's too intolerant. And so what I was trying to help him see was, if I say that every path leads to God, that's a truth claim. I'm saying the majority of Muslims, the majority of humanity, which is Muslims, Christians, and Jews, they're wrong. Every path leads to heaven. That's a truth claim. If I say to you, half the religions and philosophies of the world lead to heaven, that's a truth claim. I'm saying half are right and half are wrong. That is a truth claim. And when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father except through me, that's also a truth claim. He's saying, you've got to put your faith in me. I am the way to heaven. So let's be real honest. We all make truth claims. Let's not sit back and act like, oh, I'm a really open-minded, really tolerant person because I say all paths lead to heaven, all paths lead to God. No, you're making a truth claim. And I can promise you, if I say that 1 + 1 = 2, I'm not necessarily being arrogant. Now, I might be arrogant, but just to make a truth claim does not mean you're being arrogant and intolerant. It means this is my take on reality. You better ask me, what's the evidence that your take on reality is true? And I'm going to ask you the same question. And what is your take on reality? What's the evidence that your take on reality is true?
So kind of tell us about the discussion you had with him and either one of you, the response that you received.
I thought he was really genuine. He gets pegged for trying just to poke holes and then walk away. But I thought he was genuine. I mean, he did ask questions like, will animals be in heaven? And, the lion will lie down with the sheep. So I believe that animals will be in heaven, literally. He would ask questions like, why Jesus amongst other religions? He said he got burned a few times by Christians who were so judgmental about other faiths. And so we dug into that a little bit. But, his mom was sitting there the whole time. And I guess his mom typically doesn't show up, but she showed up for us. And she held her cross out the entire time, kind of pointing it to Logan, pointing it to us. And I think that shows her obvious desire to get her sons, him and Jake, really thinking about the faith and moving towards the faith. So that was a very, very interesting part of it, because he would really come after, he mainly really went after you. I tried to more of the emotional connection. And yet at the same time, I think at the end of the time, he was genuinely wrestling, and yet he would turn to his mom and try and, again, push back on her faith. So it's fascinating dynamics, but offset yet again. There was still an hour of time where he wanted to connect.
His objection was that Christianity is too true or something, or that
Too narrow.
Too narrow, yeah.
No, I'm being facetious.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, like too narrow. I don't understand the objection there. Like what would that apparently he's just saying that no way that God would allow this to happen, that God would not send a son, or what would his, because I didn't watch the entire interview.
All right. Who here has a problem with the idea of God being angry? All right, well, Logan has a problem with God being angry. And guess what? So do a lot of Americans. God is love. God doesn't get angry. The wrath of God? I mean, how primitive. You really believe that? Yeah, I sure do believe that. You know why? Because I promise you that if one of you kidnaps one of my little granddaughters, I'm going to be real angry. And guess what? If I'm not angry, my granddaughter doesn't matter to me. Not with a selfish anger, but with a righteous indignation. Is God angry? Yes, he is. Not with a selfish anger. Oh, you've offended me. Oh, you rained on my party. No, none of that. With a righteous indignation of how we dehumanize each other. That's sin. Racism is dehumanizing. Sexism is dehumanizing. Sexually exploiting someone is dehumanizing. She's not a Barbie doll. She's a human being created in the image of God. Don't use her sexually. Greed, dehumanizing. Your money's more important than you are. I want your money. Coveting, dehumanizing. And so God is angry because we dehumanize each other, and God has created us not to dehumanize each other, but to respect each other, to love each other.
So when you visit campuses, is that the most common sticking point, that the path is too narrow? If you had to really bring it down, what is the limiting current belief of Gen Z when confronted with the truth that prevents them from accepting Jesus? What would that be?
Yeah, moral relativism, for sure. And this white, Western adopted philosophy, which is all religions are true, and how dare you say that you have the right religion. So they will say, look at the elephant. Look at all paths lead up to the mountaintop. So all religions are just grabbing. One's grabbing the ear. One's grabbing the foot of the elephant. One's grabbing the trunk. And see, you guys are all just grabbing part of God. And yet what they don't get is, well, those people are blind, so they don't realize they're grabbing parts of the elephant. Well, okay, then someone has tremendous vigilance and spiritual superiority to say, I'm the one who's not blind. And I see Charlie grabbing the trunk, so he's Buddhist. I see Cliffe grabbing the foot, so he's Hindu. So you guys are all idiots. All gods are the same. But what you don't realize is you are not only spiritually elitist, but you are also rejecting the exclusive truth claims of 95% of the world. So that's one of the biggest challenges.
Would you agree with that? Is that the core objection you receive?
Yeah, and now let's be real honest. I think it really comes down to, I want to sleep with whoever I want to sleep with.
Well, that's a separate issue, though. Meaning that they won't believe it if it's true. That's Frank Turek's line. Would you believe Christianity if it was true?
Right.
And most people would not, because it would change their life.
Correct. And so therefore, the reason I reject Christ is for a moral reason, and then I hide behind the intellectual reason. But if you push comes to shove, I mean, my younger brother went to Princeton University, and at Princeton, he used to share Christ with his roommates late into the night. Around about midnight, he'd turn to his Princeton classmates and say, guys, if you're just going to ask these questions, we'll pull an all-nighter if this is honest. But if the real issue is, I want to sleep around and I want to cheat on my next exam because the pressure to get into med school is intense, then let's be honest. And every single time his Princeton classmates would say, Stuart, you're correct. This is not an intellectual problem. It's a moral issue. Of course, yeah. And he would say, guys, wait, we don't have to pull an all-nighter. Good night. Have a good night's sleep.
So then, how then do you overcome that, if at all?
I think for me, it's getting rather simple. The older I get. You know, morality's relative, which means the guy who took a whack at President Trump and killed another guy, it's all relative. That's his definition of truth. And the trade traffic, well, you know, it's all relative. So if you're upset about it, fine, but I kind of enjoy it. And truth is relative. You know something? You can't live that out. Because even when you were a little kid, if your sibling got more ice cream in their ice cream bowl than you did in your ice cream bowl, what would you say? Oh, that's cool? No, you'd say, that's not fair. And if you're married and your spouse takes a whack at you, you don't say, oh, that felt good, honey, why don't you do that again? No, you say, you should not do that. You ought not to do that. It is impossible to live out moral relativism. Doesn't work.
Do you find that to be persuasive to the students you talk to?
I take a different route. That's probably the better route. I take the route, though, of, look, statistically, 2 guys from Yale wrote this book, Premarital Sex in America, and promiscuity is directly correlated with serious mental health problems, especially for women. Men, for some reason, are able to cut off their emotions sexually from the physical side and just live out their physical well-being of shagging any woman they possibly can. But there's clear breakdown as well, these Yale authors are writing, showing that there's a drastic increase in divorce if you're sleeping around as well. But again, you can go there,
yeah.
But the best answer is making Christ more attractive than just, I'm going to shag the next thing or person with a pulse that I possibly can. And if Jesus is more attractive in the way where he says, I love you unconditionally, no matter your failings, I offer you grace. You know, it's the whole idea of your job can't die for you. Your job, if you find your identity in it, you're going to be ultimately crushed. If you find your identity in your wife, you're going to be ultimately crushed. It's St. Augustine's ordered loves. If you put God at the top, you will live a life of incredible flourishing. So that's kind of where I go.
Yeah, and I want to get to some questions here in a second. I visit college campuses, as you guys do, and I get the spicier encounters at times. I'm sure you guys get them as well. But what's so fascinating is that I'll come and talk primarily about politics, but as you well know, I always share the gospel whenever it comes up. But inevitably, almost always, if I go and I have a table and what I want to talk about for the day never remains, and it could be about immigration, it could be about that there are no genders and two sexes and unlimited personalities, whatever it is. Within minutes, they are asking me, well, are you religious? Because they have been so trained and conditioned because they want to get down into, well, where is this coming from? Because if you're saying something that's true and they think about it, they say, well, do you think there's a God that's telling you this? Because they want a moral license to live as they want to live. But what I've found is that almost all of these conversations yield back to some moral standard at some point. And many college students and even college professors will deny the fact that there is a moral standard, but they're living up to some standard at some point. So someone tells them that murder is wrong or murder is evil or theft is wrong. They say, oh, that's just common sense. We just know that. I know that murder is wrong. I understand that. So okay, why do we have so many murderers then if everyone knows that it's wrong? So do you guys encounter that as well, that it gets down to the deeper issues rather quickly?
Yes, it definitely gets down to the deeper issues rather quickly when you have the privilege of talking with thinking people. And people have to think. I mean, I'm very grateful that over 290 times in the Gospels, Jesus asks questions. And this whole idea that faith is anti-intellectual, faith is anti-rational, faith is anti-logical, that's a naive, blind faith. And Christ does not call us to a naive, blind faith. Does he call us to something you can prove? No. To prove means to show it cannot be another way. I can't prove, Charlie, that I'm not just a bad dream you're having right now. Maybe your eyesight is flipping out on you and you're having this weird dream of Cliffe. So I can't prove it, but the overwhelming evidence is you and I are having this conversation now. That's why we behave the way we do. So we've got to use our minds and ask ourselves, what does the evidence point to as being true? I do not think the universe is religiously ambiguous. I think God has left more than enough evidence for any thinking person to believe in him. That's why anthropology shows us that around the world, every culture has some type of religion.